Poland has been rocked by over a week of daily mass protests after a ruling by the Constitutional Court that would basically outlaw abortion in the case of fetal abnormalities. Now, in a country where access to abortion is already restricted, that would impose even more barriers for legal procedures, because we all know that when abortion is outlawed, it doesn't stop abortion, it just stops safe abortion. Now, this represents an outright assault on women's rights, denying essential healthcare to Polish women, and it's rooted in the reactionary and sexist ideas that women don't have the right to choose what they do with their bodies. So, of course, I know socialist feminists across the world are watching these events and standing in solidarity with Polish women, but also, drawing these conclusions and inspiration and lessons from the struggle in Poland. This is not the first time, even in the last 5 years, that these mass movements in Poland had to break out because of the regime. I think the international element is very clear against sexism and misogyny in your own countries as well. So today, we really want to draw out these lessons, and we're joined by socialist feminist Tiphain, who is a member of the ISA, and you've been on the ground in Poland directly, intervening in this movement. So can you tell us a little bit about what's going on and kind of what's led to these mass demonstrations?
So, as you say, the ruling by the Constitutional Tribunal that fetus abnormalities is an unconstitutional reason to abort means that 96% of the legal abortion that take place in Poland now will be now illegal, knowing that there is also up to 200,000 abortions every year that are illegal or done abroad. They had already tried to impose such a ruling in 2016, not the Constitutional Tribunal, but the Conservatives. And as you mentioned, there was then a huge women's movement and a women's strike that forced them to cancel this move. But since that, there has been a series of attacks against or smaller attacks on reproductive rights. And this summer, we have also seen a rise of homophobic state propaganda and of homophobic attacks, which was met by resistance by the LGBTQI plus movement. So it's in this context that this new attack for a total ban of abortion basically is taking place. In 2016, we have seen a lot of new layers of young women and school students, which is unusual in Poland, taking the streets. And now in 2020, we can say that it's even extending to broader layers of the working class. There has been demonstrations in small towns and working class neighborhood where there hasn't been a demonstration for the last 30 years, and where the ruling Conservative Party, the PiS, had a majority. There has been protests in workplaces. Tram workers, bus workers have held protests on their workplaces. Hospitals workers too. Every day I see new examples of workplaces where a protest in favor of abortion rights has taken place, and the support for the PiS is dropping considerably. And we can say that from the beginning of the movement, the aspirations of the movements have really broadened from the feminist question to becoming a real anti-government movements. There are a lot of demands to overthrow the government and so on. But there is also but of course the question of abortion rights is still very present, and people do not want the compromise anymore that allows us to abort only in case of fetal abnormalities, if our health is in danger, or if the pregnancy is the result of a crime. People do not want this compromise anymore. They are ready to fight for abortion on demand.
That's brilliant. And I think also seeing kind of from outside all the slogans, I think one really stands out, which is I wish I could abort the government, which I think really shows the political character that you're talking about, and about how people are making these connections. It's not just the court. It's not it's something a lot deeper than that. And I think across Eastern Europe and to some extent across the world as well, we've seen the growth of the right, the growth of the far right on the streets, but also in government. So do you think this movement represents kind of a challenge to this rule?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, the government is in a bad position now, and they know it. There are some cracks in the regime already. They had an internal conflict recently around very secondary issues regarding animal rights. Anyway, and they know that the situation is dangerous for them, and they are having a big repressive reaction to that. They have implicitly called the fascists to defend the churches against the protesters. They have sent the armies in the street. The prosecutors have announced that anyone who calls for a demonstration of more than 5 persons will be prosecuted and could end up to 8 years in prison. And everyone who answers to the call to demonstrate could also be prosecuted under the pretext of the pandemic situation. And we can, as I was saying, the peace is losing its base of support in the society. Solidarność, the trade union, has unfortunately and shamefully called to join the fascists in the defense of the church. And but in the rank and file of Solidarność, there are a lot of people who actually want to fight for women's rights. So what the leadership of this conservative union is doing do not reflect its basis, and they are losing ground. And there are even some hooligans, even if they are in a minority, who are not defending women's rights, when it's usually a very they're usually a place of recruitment for the far right. And I just read, for example, that a retired lieutenant called the cops not to repress the women's movement. So the peace is in a very bad situation right now, but that the question of what we replace the peace with and is posed now, and it also means that we will face a very strong repression in the coming days.